Hello survivors and welcome to another Walking Dead Road to Survival video, and in this video we are going to be taking a first look at Gold Mythic Adam, who is going to be coming to the game as an advanced token wheel character. Now visually we have kind of had a teaser of this character before. In my characters list at the beginning of the month we did get a look at this character, his art on the left hand side, but now we get a bit of a better look at him on the right hand side, and as you can see he has not got an attached weapon by the looks of things, but he has got those Molotovs on his belt. Sadly, he can't just start throwing them or anything like that. But he has got a pizza slice t-shirt. I didn't actually notice that in his original art. I could probably have seen it, I just didn't notice. Maybe he was a pizza delivery guy, something like that. I'm not 100% certain. I believe this is the second Adam in the game. I did have some messages telling me that we have had an Adam in the game before, so that's pretty cool. On the left-hand side, we can see the art in a bit more detail again. He is part of the Saviors. He's trying to break into someone's car. He's got like the Saviors group behind him in the shadows, as you can see. And that weapon is brutal. It's a baseball bat with a meat cleaver attached. Pretty brutal weapon. At level 1600 though, limit break 3, he has got 44,657 attack, 13,955 defense, and 34,423 HP. He is going to be a strong character holding that baseball bat. He is going to be in the control role, Gold Mythic of course, and he will of course be part of the Savior's Allegiance. As I said, those guys in the background, probably part of that group too. Now the first thing we're going to be looking at is going to be Adam's Adrenaline Rush, and it is called Collateral Shot. It has got a recharge rate of 55 AP, deal 900% damage, plus 400% for each other control teammate to a line of enemies. All Savior's Allegiance teammates get 100% stun resistance for 3 turns, with equal odds apply stun to either the target or that line of enemies for 2 turns. So obviously the first part is pretty big. 900% damage is pretty good by itself. It is a deal damage as well, but it will get a further 400% damage for other control role characters in the team. So if you do team him up with someone like Danny, he is a control role character as well, this would go up to 1300%. And if you get like Eva and Ghost in that team as well, it would go up to 1700% damage. That is absolutely brutal to a line of enemies. All Savior's Allegiance teammates getting 100% stun resistance for 3 turns is nice. It would go to him regardless because he is a Savior's character. But if you did want to try and team up with other Saviors, you could try and do that. Someone like Amber could work quite well. And then with equal odds, apply stun to either the target or that line of enemies for 2 turns. What's good about this is it would obviously stun the person who you do Adrenaline Rush. Now I'll see if this actually is going to work when it comes to Outlast. If you take someone out and you put them into Outlast, does it stun them afterwards if they have a cleanse? Someone like Eris, that's pretty much what I think a lot of people will want to know. Because as it stands, his kit is kind of reminiscent of someone like Crag, but potentially could hit harder. We'll have to wait and see that. But let's see how that stun works. Basically, if it is going to keep Eris stunned after we take her out. So here we are off of turn 1, and I can just Adrenaline Rush Eris on the bottom line. You do always want to target the person who you want to stun, i.e. someone like Eris. Otherwise, if it doesn't have the line of enemies stunned, then you're going to run into a problem. It is 50-50 if that's going to happen. We'll do the Adrenaline Rush, and you can see that we are going to take out the target, and it is the target that got stunned afterwards. And as you can see, she is stunned in an Outlast state. This is perfect. This is exactly what you want to see. We take down Eris. She cleansed. You saw the animation happen, and then the stun got applied. It all basically happened at the same time, but you can easily see she's in Outlast, and she is now stunned. So now, when it goes to their turn, what will happen is she will just get dropped, and she won't take her turn. Unless she had like a cleanse come in, that's the only way it could happen. She is not going to be able to take her turn, and there she is. She's down. She didn't take her signature move, didn't do a rush. Absolutely nothing. So we'll look at the upgrades on the Adrenaline Rush, and you can see at grade 2 it gets an upgrade where it does damage to a line of enemies. So it goes from single target damage up to damage to a line of enemies, which is obviously a nice little boost. I would see that as more bonus damage. That targeted damage is very good for isolating particular characters, as I showed. Next up at grade 4, you can see we get an upgrade where all Savior's Allegiance teammates get 100% stun resistance for 3 turns. Now, they were not other Savior's teammates, so we didn't obviously give anyone else the stun resistance. The only person who got the stun resistance was Adam himself. It's pretty much as simple as that. Then in Limit Break 1, we have an upgrade where it was plus 400% damage for each other control role teammate. Now, there were some control role teammates in that team, so he did get a bit of a boost to the damage output. Remember, it is still damage. You might want to have at least 1 or 2 other control role characters to get the best out of Adam, just because his Adrenaline Rush can't crit. It's going to rely pure damage, and the more 400% additives you get would be very, very nice indeed. And of course, don't forget any attack buffs and so on and so forth would be good. We did see a attack buff at the end there. I'm not sure where that came from, so I think it's Adam's kit. We'll have to see. Then at Limit Break 3, he gets an upgrade where with equal odds, apply stun to either the target or that line of enemies for 2 turns. Now, it's always going to apply to the target, and that's why we targeted Eris. I didn't want to risk it where it potentially didn't target Eris, and obviously it only did the 50-50 and went to Kenny. So we targeted Eris on purpose, and that way it guaranteed the stun proc on her. She didn't have any resist, so she's going to obviously be stunned, and as you saw in the Outlast state, it worked absolutely perfectly for her. This Adrenaline Rush is, like I said, very reminiscent of Krag. Hits probably a bit harder, honestly. He has better base stats for sure, but also the fact that he is going to be hitting for a much higher percentage on that deal damage, especially if you have other control role characters in the team. Like 2 more characters and he's hitting 1,700% damage, deal damage to a line of enemies. If he has 3 other characters in there, it's over 2,000% deal damage, which is brutal. Any attack buffs in there, you're going to see monumental levels of damage coming out of Adam, and he can get this Adrenaline Rush off really quickly because of his specialist skill, which we will check out later, but he obviously can get this off very, very quickly indeed. I like the Adrenaline Rush. Krag's a great character, kind of one of the most long-lasting damage dealers we've had, and Adam seems to be kind of like superseding him, even if only just a little bit, but the amount of damage and like attacks that he should get should be a lot higher. Now the next thing we're going to take a look at is going to be Adam's signature move, and it is called Special Delivery, and it has got an initial cooldown of turn 1, cooldown of 1 turn, number of uses unlimited, make a critical attack against an enemy for 800% damage, disarm that line of enemies for 1 turn, but plus 1 duration if there is at least 1 other Savior's Allegiance teammate. So, Special Delivery, confirmation, he is a piece of delivery guy, maybe. But when it comes to the actual hit, it is going to be a critical based attack, but it is a guaranteed crit. So you don't have to build him in any way for crit. He doesn't have to have 1535. You can still build pure attack and get massive bonuses out of this. And then maybe an auxiliary mod can go for crit multiplier just to make this hit a little bit harder. Now the disarm doesn't come in first, unfortunately, and that would have been nicer so that he couldn't have anything happen to him when he attacked the enemy, but that's not going to be the case. He will disarm them afterwards, which I don't really see as being that big a deal, honestly. It's just kind of okay. He might potentially not take someone out with this because there are obviously some very tanky characters around, lots of bonus HP, but if he has at least 1 other Savior's teammate in the team, it'll be a 2-turn disarm instead. So it is pretty much simple as that. But remember, he is attacking 1 character because it says attack an enemy for 800% damage, but he disarms the line. So maybe you could see it as being beneficial for disarming the character behind the character that he actually targets. And taking that into account, what I will do is I'll take out a character who I think I can take out pretty straightforwardly with this signature move. And let's say we have someone in front like Noor who has a very problematic weapon, you know, stun on defense or something, basically that you do not want to risk attacks against. If I take out the character, I don't even need to take her out, but if I actually do the signature move against the character, you can see we are going to disarm the character in the same line, and it is Noor here who's disarmed for 1 turn. We do not have any other Savior's teammates. If I had 1, 2, 3, or 4, this could go up to 2 turns, but it can't go more than 2 turns. This could be nice for certain stages on the actual Savior's roadmap too, because there are weapons that proc that can do things like revive people. For instance, there is a I think there is a Vance in there, and his weapon, if you attack him, he will revive people. So disarming him could be really nice, but you can't target him just because of how his kit works. If you target him, you can proc his weapon because the disarm comes in afterwards. Like I say, it's a bit disappointing on that one, but that's about it. Now jumping straight into the upgrades, you can see at grade 3 it gets plus 300% damage. So it goes from a 500% guaranteed critical hit to an 800% guaranteed critical hit. This is obviously a big boost. All the multipliers would come in afterwards when it comes to crit multipliers if you had that in his combat mods. Then at grade 5 it gets -1 to starting cooldown. So it goes from an initial starting cooldown of turn 2 to turn 1. Obviously, a first turn starting cooldown is very, very good. And then Limit Break 2, it gets an upgrade where it gets +1 duration if there is at least one other Saviour's Allegiance teammate. I don't see this as being that big a deal. The disarm isn't that big of a deal in any case in it by itself, but it can just be nice, just like I said, if you want to disarm the other character in the same line. If the disarm came in before the hit, it would have been way better, just because he can get controlled or even like miss the hit because of like hitting an absolute defense or something. Because he hasn't disarmed the enemy, their weapons can still proc 60% of the time, generally speaking too. So more often than not, against a lot of characters, he will be controlled in some sort of way or not get this hit off properly. So you will have to make sure he's got the right resists or the right setup, or other characters that do disarm first. I will say that there are bonuses to disarming enemies with Adam's kit. If you have other characters that can do it first, it is even better. So I think this signature move is actually pretty decent. The fact that it's a guaranteed critical hit is a big, big bonus. All-out attack on his weapon, crit multiplier in the bottom left-hand corner on auxiliary mod. That way you can push his adrenaline rush as far as it can go without kind of going on to downsides on this signature move, because it's a guaranteed crit. No problems at all. 800% guaranteed crit is very high too. Get that crit multiplier in the auxiliary slot, should hit very, very nicely indeed. Especially with that attack buff that you see floating around on the team. Adam does provide that up to 100% attack by the looks of things. We'll have to check out how that is working. But overall, I think the signature move is quite heavy hitting. Just a bit of a disappointment when it comes to the order of operations, when it comes to the damage coming before the potential disarm. So moving across to Adam's mythic abilities, these are his passive skills. You can see, first up we have got precision. Because he is a control role character, he will get precision. Enemy resistances are 40% lower against this fighter. That does mean he has more chance of hitting anything that is a control, for instance that disarm. The next one's called Adamant Adam. He has got 50% taunt resistance and 50% impair resistance. This isn't crazy high, but it is just decent, because then you could go with other resistances in his combat mods, for instance stun and confuse, and he'd be pretty good against the debilitating if you wanted to go that way. Generally speaking, on attack team characters, you only want to go with 1 resist and go with like 2 attack verses just to get the best out of them when it comes to their damage. Next up is 30 minutes or less. That's pizza delivery boy confirmation 100%. When amped 2 triggers, 100% chance to disarm an enemy for 2 turns. So he can already disarm someone at the beginning of the fight because of his specialist skill triggering. And this actually plays into the next passive, which is called Pizza Time. Okay, 100% confirmation now. At the start of each turn, if at least 1 enemy is disarmed, all teammates cleanse a negative status effect and get 100% attack for 2 turns. This is massive. The damage output that he and also his teammates can do is crazy, and he's actually massively buffing other characters, namely those characters I talked about. Even Ghost, who's already very good, because she's a control role character, can be used in the same team as him, and Adam getting big benefits. And Danny, also another very heavy hitting character, getting 100% attack boost on his signature move off turn 1 is going to be very nice indeed. Adam's a very heavy hitter, but to have this sort of like support in his passives is huge. Let's just see that in action when it comes to him attacking, just so you kind of get the idea. So as I start the fight, you can see I have disarmed an enemy on the defense team, and in the bottom right hand corner you can see Eris is disarmed, and because she got disarmed, my entire team has 100% attack. It doesn't matter who I'd have in my team, everybody would have 100% attack. This is beyond powerful. So powerful in terms of that buff output. We'll be able to melt through particular teams very quickly. If teams don't have Outlast characters, they'll be able to get dismantled. Like teams, even if they've got like Halo 2s and stuff like that, you'll be able to take them out very quickly off of turn 1. Outlast is the only way to really kind of counter this. Things like Halo and stuff like that as well. Very nice indeed, and could work well with anyone who is a deal damage character. Characters like Ruben, Abraham, if you pick those tough characters up. Very nice potential combos with a lot of characters on it. Adam is effectively like coming in as a support character, but also he's obviously coming in as a big damage dealer with that adrenaline rush and signature move. Now as we look at the upgrades, you can see there's actually maybe an error with the actual visuals on that resistance. As you can see at grade 1, Adamant Adam passive comes in with 50% taunt resistance and 50% impair resistance. At grade 2, it comes in with Precision Part 1. Enemy resistance is a 20% lower against this fighter. But grade 3, Adamant comes in again with a further 50% taunt resistance and 50% impair resistance. That should make it 100% resistance to both. And I would have assumed that would have been the case, like at least 80%. But 50% just didn't seem that great. It was just like a little bit of a bonus. But if it is 100%, that's obviously quite nice. I will pass it on to Scopely because it could just be a visual error when it comes to the description on the actual passive itself. Moving on to grades 4 and 5 though, you can see at grade 4 he gets the first half of 30 minutes or less. When amped 2 triggers, 50% chance to disarm an enemy for 2 turns. And then at grade 5 he gets the first half of Pizza Time. At the start of each turn, if at least one enemy is disarmed, all teammates cleanse a negative status effect and get 50% attack for 2 turns. I really like the fact that it still works even if you have him at low grade. So if you couldn't pull for him to be LB3, could still pull for him to be grade 5 and he'd act more of a support character, which is still pretty decent, who can still hit reasonably hard at the same time. If you look onto the limit breaks, you can see at limit break 1 comes in, Precision 2, making it 40% lower against this character when it comes to enemy resistances. And then limit break 2, you have 30 minutes or less part 2 come in, where it'll be a 100% chance to disarm an enemy for 2 turns when amped 2 triggers. I would say that is quite important if you want to try and utilize the Pizza Time passive, which gets boosted up at limit break 3, where it becomes 100% attack for 2 turns if an enemy is disarmed at the beginning of each turn. And this actually counts off of turn 1, as I showed. His initial amped trigger will come in, then the disarmed will come in, and then the buff will come in. And that happens right at the beginning of the fight, and it counts as before, you know, the turn actually is applied. So that's really, really cool. Big damage output potential, and potentially much better resist than it initially did seem. I think it should probably be 100% taunt resistance and 100% impair resistance. And then, like I said, you choose one of the other ones. Maybe Confuse, maybe Stun. Those seem to be the kind of more vital ones. Maybe Daze, but I wouldn't necessarily say Daze is super important. It really depends on the team setup you have for him, what you want to get out of it. You could potentially have him rushing off of turn 1 because of how his specialist skill works. But that's it for his passives. Very nice. They work extremely well. And like I said, it's kind of changed the dynamic of Adam as a character. Sure, he can hit very hard, but he's also a very nice support character at the same time. Now, you might have been seeing as I was talking about some of his passives, he actually has a brand new specialist skill, and it is amped 2. At the start of this fighter's turn, they heal for 30% of their max HP. If this fighter has 100% HP, they get 50% of their max AP. So the main difference is here, they have a heal that comes in before the proc check of amped comes in, where like a character could be like 2 HP lower than their max HP before, and it wouldn't proc amped on amped 1. Whereas on amped 2, you get healed for 30% of your max HP, and that has a potential to heal you up to 100% so that you get an amped proc and obviously get 50% of your max AP. This isn't going to be too much of a problem off of turn 1. It should always proc pretty much, but off of turn 2 and onwards, he could get targeted a little bit, so every little helps when it comes to him being healed back up. 30% isn't massive. If he gets dogpiled too much, it won't heal him up enough, but obviously if you have a very aggressive team with a lot of damage dealers in it, he shouldn't get super dogpiled because other characters will probably be heavier damage dealers and he's supporting those characters, so he might even get ignored. So this is just a nice little bonus. If there's like a little bit of burn or bleed come in, he'll be able to heal that potentially back up to proc that specialist skill. I'm not going to show how this works. It works exactly like amped, and you saw it in the previous clips, but this is just a nice little bonus over what amped 1 was originally. Now, as you can see, he does have no attached weapon, so we'll have to wait and see what happens with the weapon on the left-hand side, which does look absolutely mental, I'm not going to lie. I would say you just want to go all-out attack here. I mean, you could go 15-35. It is a good way of boosting his attack and adjacent teammates. It obviously multiplies pretty well, but he doesn't need the actual crit. So if you have a weapon that just gives damage to adjacent characters, he could just take that. And it like 20% or higher, generally speaking, when it comes to those sort of weapons. I don't think there's one in Strong that was like freely available, but there could have been one in one of the like event missions. Other than that, I think this is a pretty good character to just go all out attack on. Because of that guaranteed crit on the actual SIG, you don't have to worry about crit too much at all. So this is Gold Mythic Adam coming to the game with a brand new specialist, but also a very, very nice kit as well. I mean, the signature move and Adrenaline Rush hit extremely hard, but those passives add so much. That boost to the attack is really good, and he procs it himself. You can obviously have other characters in the team that do disarm, but his signature is going to reapply disarm to potentially last longer, so on and so forth. It might be worth teaming up with at least one other Saviors unit so that disarm does last 2 turns. This is going to be extremely handy for the Saviors roadmap, but it could be really good for war as well, just because of how, you know, the team up with other control role characters is really good, and some of the control role characters are 2 of the like best damage dealers in the game, pretty much, with Eva and Ghost and Danny. Now those characters obviously have fallen off against the Regina leads, but that's 1 out of 3 defenses. He will buff your attack team generally against the 2 of the remaining 3 defenses if you want to use that kind of setup. But yeah, that's Adam, and like I said, he could be buffing some of your characters that you already have in your roster, which is always nice. And he brings pretty decent damage to the table as well. He will be available in advanced tokens, breaking that ultra token streak that we did have going on. Do tell me your thoughts though on Adam as a new character coming to the game. That is the end of my video, guys. I want to thank you very much for tuning in, and as always, keep on surviving, guys. Keep on surviving.